Hey, Dr. Pinto. Oh, Chris.
Oh, oh, sorry. How are you? How are you, Alan? Thanks for the formality here.
Hello, everyone.
Jeff. I thought that was the Star Wars, not Star Wars, but Live Long and Prosper. What is that?
Oh, yeah. Hey, that's pretty good. Hey, yeah. Star Trek.
Star Trek, that's it. There
Star
we go.
Trek. Yeah.
Dating myself here.
No. Trekkie fan, that type of thing.
There you go.
Yeah.
We probably ought to have a secret handshake.
Yeah, okay. Is this a Little Rascals or something?
Snap your hands back and forth and up and
Yeah, it's just a little too much work for me to remember that.
I guess it worked. Everything worked, Jeff? Yeah, you go. Oh, boy.
We're gonna wait just a minute or two more to see if we get some more. There's Matt coming in. Hey, Mr. Gifford.
Lori's here. We have 2 John Pintos.
We don't spread that around.
Okay.
No.
We've been
Yeah,
trying.
we
to
have a Lori
multiply them
Jones.
for years.
And Mike Matthews, we have to wait.
We're just a few more seconds and it'll call a meeting to order. All right, I see 5 commissioners. That gives us a quorum. So we will. There he is. There's Mike Matthews. So
I think we have a full.
really,
3,
we're all
5,
ready
7,
to go.
yeah.
Here.
6, 7, there's 8.
Yep. And Mike is on. Good evening, Mike. So we'll call the meeting to order. I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands, one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty,
liberty, and
justice
justice
for all.
for all. Lori, would you read the roll call this evening?
Sure. Matt Gifford,
Present.
Lori Jones, present. Thanks. Alan Kibbe,
Present?
Jeff Mangles,
Present.
Chris McDonald,
Present.
Mike Matthews. I can see Mike's on.
I could see
Maybe
him.
muted.
Can see him, I can't hear him.
Dr. John Pinto,
Here. Present.
Chris White,
Present.
and I'll try Mike one more time. Mike Matthews.
I see that he's trying to connect his little mic icon. It's disappeared. It's probably trying to connect again.
Okay. Is
All
that the
right,
roll?
thank you. That's the roll call. Thank you, Laura. We'll wait for, here comes Mike. Mike, could you say hello? Or unmute yourself and say hello?
Can you give us a thumbs up, Mike?
Or raise your hand?
Raise
if you
your
can hear
hand.
us?
Yeah, just raise your hand if you can hear us.
Hey, can you hear me now? I'm so sorry.
There you go.
I'm at a train
Alright.
station here, and I will try to just be in the background. Apologies.
All right, so Mike Matthews
Technologies.
present.
Thank you, Mike. So Mike is present. Amelia, do we have any public comment?
We don't actually have any attendees, so there's not even anyone to raise their hand if they had a public comment.
So that's wonderful. So we can move right ahead. We've had draft minutes from Lori and from Amelia. Are there any comments or additions? Any thoughts on those? If not, would somebody make a motion to approve? John,
I'll make a motion to approve
Thank
the minutes as amended.
Matt, seconds?
I'll
All
second
in
that.
favor?
Aye.
All in favor? Minutes are approved. Before we start the application review committee, I'm just going to go a little bit out of order here. As is my prerogative, like it says in the agenda. I'd like to introduce Chris White to everyone. Chris is our newest harbor management commissioner. He reached out to us in June and we talked and he applied to the mayor and that all was approved. So we really want to welcome him to the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission. And I'm just going to ask Chris to give us a little bit of his background and why he's interested and how he comes to us. So turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Alan. Hi, I'm Chris White. I was from here originally. I live in Norwalk. Currently, I live over in East Norwalk now, down by Calf Pasture Beach off of 5th Street. I was born and raised up in Easton, Connecticut, and I have been, in, on, or around the water in some capacity for the last probably 17-ish years. Spent a lot of time working professionally in the industry. I was editor and writer at a bunch of boating magazines. I worked for Yachting Magazine, Power Motor Yacht, Sail. I got to do a lot of fun stuff there. Currently work for a marketing firm, still heavily involved in the boating industry. I have a Mako 20, an old 1979 that I should be enjoying right now, but it's currently in my driveway because my outboard is giving me some trouble. And yeah, I spend a lot of time on the water. My office is down at 132 Water Street, right between Rex and Marine Max. So I'm currently looking at the harbor. And yeah, just wanted to get involved and see how I could be more involved with what goes on there.
We're very excited to have you here. At least I am, and I think we probably all are. That means we only have one vacant seat on the commission at this point. And I do know the mayor has got 2 candidates for that empty seat as we speak. And I don't know what's going on with that. That's his prerogative to appoint, but I just wanted to introduce Chris before you started really wondering what that extra face is there in the top row. Dr. Pinto, Application Review Committee.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman. We have one application, it's a CAM application that's will be presented. I guess Tom Quinn is here. I'm going to represent the agent. 36 Shorefront Park, it's a CAM application. The applicant, which is 36 Shorefront Park LLC, proposes to demolish an existing structure and reconstruct a single-family house on the property in compliance with the height and bulk requirements of a B residence, zoning, and FEMA requirements. Certainly of interest to the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission is certainly the water runoff from roof, driveway, and other impervious surfaces will be redirected to rain gardens for water infiltration and maintaining water quality near the harbor. And I think Mr. Quinn is here to give us a very brief overview of that. If anyone has any questions, certainly after his presentation, we can certainly have him respond.
Yes, hi, my name is Tom Quinn. I'm with Peak Engineers. It looks like my video is not working. I'm not quite sure if it's on my end or your end, but can I still share my screen, Amelia?
Yes, you should have the permissions to do that.
Okay. Well, like I said, my name is Tom Quinn. I'm with Peak Engineers. My office is located in Georgetown, Connecticut. I've been working with this builder for probably almost 20 years. The applicant is CJT Builders. Liz Suchy, attorney Liz Suchy, submitted the application for the CAM. This is a tear down and rebuild. And like Commissioner Gibb just described, the site is very flat. Let me pull this up. Can you guys see that?
No, we can't.
Let's see.
Alrighty. Here we go. How's that?
There you
Okay,
go.
There you go.
Okay, so this is my watershed map, but this gives you an idea of what's happening here. To the left of the screen, that would be to the west, is Shorefront Park Road. To the east is the harbor, which is right over here, the tidal way in Norwalk. So the property lines, as you know, they come a little bit past the harbor line, but there's a seawall here, and there's some, not really some steps down to the tidal flat, but there is a concrete platform here, and there's a second one here, and there's a third one here. Right now, the site is so flat, but it does generally, and I'm talking about maybe an 8 to 12 inch pitch from the street towards the seawall. So you can see that the elevation at the street is 7.7. The elevation at the seawall is 6.7. So it's about a foot pitch. What happens now is the existing, can I switch this to, so here's the existing conditions. There is a large concrete driveway in front of the property and concrete walkways that come all the way around to the north side. There is a catch basin right here in front of what probably was an old garage. So the garage has been filled in, and I guess it's living space. There's a catch basin right here. The pipe is running so that it heads underneath the building. So I don't know exactly where it goes. However, on the seawall, there are two pipes. There's one here that discharges on this section of concrete, and there's another one here that discharges on this section of concrete. So I can only surmise, and all these roof drains discharge directly into the ground. And again, not sure where they go. So I'm guessing that this catch basin and all the existing roof downspouts are connected together and discharge right here onto these concrete pads and then directly onto the tidal flat. So that's what's happening with the drainage currently. Very little water is heading out into the street. The elevation there is 7.5, like I said, 7.8. So just a little bit of this concrete right here in this area is heading out into the street, but the rest of it makes its way to this catch basin, which is at 7.4. So you can tell how flat it is. So the proposed plan here, to remove the house, we're going to greatly shrink the driveway. It's going to be much, much smaller. We're going to eliminate all that impervious concrete walkway in the back. And we're in order to mitigate, we want to do some mitigation. So we had those direct discharges. We're going to remove those two pipes. And by remove, I should say that we're going to cut them off and fill them with concrete because we don't want to get involved with the structural integrity of the wall, as DPW had commented in one of their letters. So we're simply going to cut the pipes off on the landward side of the wall. We'll cut them off, fill them with concrete. And any of the other pipes that we see that are discharging directly through that wall will, of course, either abandon or remove. So the proposed plan is to perform this. So what we'd like to do is this orange area takes up a little bit of the roof area and some of the driveway area. We're going to pitch that towards a rain garden, which will be right in this area. And this yellow portion, which is the northeast corner of the house, is going to be piped to this rain garden. Now, this rain garden will be formed by creating a planting berm right along the property line here. And the seawall is about 2 feet, I believe, above existing grade. Yeah, here's a spot elevation right here. The top of the seawall is 8 and the bottom is 6.5. So it's about 18 inches is the seawall above existing grade. So we're going to create a rain garden here, try to maximize the infiltration. I did do soil testing out there. And as you can imagine, I think the information's on the plan, but I think it was about 14 inches of topsoil, a couple layers of different topsoil. And then it was brown sand and gravels down. I think I went down 36 inches, was all really nice sand and gravel. And I did a perk test and I think it was like 1.5 inches. So we've got good soils that can absorb the water. So these two rain gardens have been designed for the water quality storm. The other 3 blue areas that you see here, this will be a ridge line, and this roof will discharge on grade here, and 2 other downspouts will be here. So there'll be no more direct discharge to the tidal flat. All the roof drains will either discharge directly on the ground or be piped to these 2 rain gardens. So that's what we're proposing for the water quality issues. The nearest catch basin, a lot of times I like to look at where the nearest catch basin is to see how we may impact the street drainage. But when you walk south, the nearest catch basin is about 200 yards to the south. It's on the bend in the road. Other than that, there's no catch basins along Shorefront Park. So the portion of our driveway and a portion of our property that does go out into the street does flow along Shorefront Park for about 200 yards before it enters a catch basin. And my guess is that catch basin also discharges directly into the tidal flat. So as you guys know, I've been in front of this commission a few times, but the number one thing goal here is to not have direct discharge into anything that's going to go into the tidal flat, and that includes a street catch basin. So this plan is going to do its best to eliminate that. There is still this portion of the driveway, which is located in the street right away, which will continue to go into the street. But the vast majority of the area where the cars are parked, which is here, and this area of the roof will all discharge into this rain garden. So those rain gardens have been designed, like I said, for the water quality storm, but Kate Throckmorton of the Environmental Land Solutions, I think she submitted a planting plan, which should be in your file, that shows how we're going to plant those rain gardens. Also, I just wanted to do some, checking up here. I think originally when the applicant submitted all the materials, he failed to submit the drainage report. So I did forward that to Amelia. I think it was that on Monday or last week, Amelia, I forwarded that to you?
I think it was yesterday or Monday.
Oh, so I don't know
That's
if
on the
that,
website.
okay, so I don't know if that's in your packet yet, but a drainage report was completed and it is now part of the application. And that is why that's where this watershed came from. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Yeah, no, Tom, thank you very much for that overview. Any commissioners have any questions regarding the water?
I just want to, we're sure that those 2 4-inch pipes that are being cut off and filled with concrete aren't coming from somewhere off the property or somewhere other than the existing residences. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not positive. To answer your question, I did not video it or anything, but the pipes are definitely being used because when I was out there, you could see a little bit of moisture in both those pipes. So we could certainly stick a video. They're 4-inch diameter, so they're not very big, but we could stick a video camera up there and push it in as far as we can go and see if they're connected. Yeah, I certainly don't want to disconnect something that maybe goes to a neighbor or
Yeah.
is used by the town. But so we could definitely make that a condition of approval, or we would video those before we do any disconnecting. The
you.
bottom line is, if even if we don't disconnect them, the all of our roof drains will be piped to these two rain gardens, and the other three downspouts will discharge on grade. We're not going to connect to any pipes.
Understood.
Any other questions?
I was just concerned we might, cut off somebody else's drainage or something with this project.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
The carrying capacity then of these rain gardens is certainly sufficient for the area of runoff then, correct, Tom?
Designed for the water quality storm, which is the 1 inch of runoff, which is that, as you guys know, it's that first amount of runoff which tends to carry all of the pollutants.
And these gardens are sufficient to carry that for the carrying capacity of that volume.
Correct. Yes, they are. The drainage report has the calculations.
And are you guys doing any significant work to the seawalls or anything else in that area?
We have not submitted an application to DEEP, and we don't intend to. We're not going to be doing any modifications to the seawall at all.
So, yeah, and again, Tom, we certainly support, best management practices as far as the deconstruction of the facility, making sure that any debris or construction gets into the harbor in any way. And then certainly we do support mitigation of, water runoff certainly into Norwalk Harbor. So.
Yeah, per the comment that I received, I believe it was in Amelia's letter, she would like us to beef up the erosion controls a little bit. That's shown on this plan here. Specifically, I'm showing some hay bales because right here, the wall, which is about 18 inches higher, drops down. So it's only about 6 inches high here above existing grade. And I had proposed a couple of hay bales, but staff would like to see a silt fence there. So I'll definitely add a silt fence there.
And excuse me, what's the FEMA flood elevation for this property?
It's AE is 12 and VE is 14.
Yeah, so isn't zoning base flood +1?
Yes, so I'm sorry, AE is 11. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I'm sorry. AE is 11. That's where the first floor is 12.2.
Yeah.
John, I have a question.
Yes, Joe.
Based on your question about the rain garden, if they're designed to handle an inch of rain, we've had a lot of rain events this past year for 2, 3, and 4 inches. Where does the outflow for that go if they get an event like that?
Are you asking me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. So the planting bed is, we can raise that up. It's going to be probably about 12 inches high. And as I mentioned, the seawall is 18 inches. And the lower area, which is right here, there's no spot elevation there, but I stepped down here onto this. I believe this is about 6 inches above the grade. So the bottom line is this whole area could flood during a larger storm up to about 6 inches. So we've got a lot of storage besides the rain garden before we'd get any direct discharge to the tidal flat.
Right. Any of the commissioners have any further questions? And we can certainly move forward. Someone would like to make a motion? Jeff?
Wouldn't this be fairly simple, John, that the proposed project is consistent with the harbor management plan based on our understanding that it will result in a significant improvement in stormwater and water quality conditions on the site, and also by raising the new building or building the new building to residents to FEMA standards, it will reduce vulnerability. And then provided that best management practices are included to avoid adverse impacts on the harbor during construction. And as I think the applicant just mentioned, that the drains that were talked about will be investigated further before they're filled in with concrete. But the motion would be consistent with the harbor management plan.
Any commissioners like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Chris. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Or opposed?
Opposed? Hearing none, we'll go move forward with that, and we'll get that our review out to you very shortly, Mr. Quinn.
All right, well, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye.
I think that is all the applications that we have, at least the formal applications that we have for this evening. But we do have some discussion points. We did send in our comment to Eversource with regard to the placement of high tension wires under the harbor. And we did receive from Eversource their plan for the exclusion zone plan. As I said, I'd like to go over those maybe at a further date. I don't know if we can do this evening, but the exclusion zone, if everyone had a chance to look at that, is quite substantial as you looked at that. So that's certainly capturing a lot of Norwalk real estate. And I think we ought to take that very close to heart with regard to what we're losing. So I think our recommendation is certainly sound. The recommendation that we made is that any future plans to renovate that facility that affect our inability to do anything that is worthwhile in that area, that Eversource would compensate the city for any overruns or special needs that are required to get that project done. But anyway, they did receive our letter, and we need to review that exclusion zone plan again. It's, as I said, it's quite substantial when you look at it. It's a three-dimensional diagram of what we can and what we can't do within the area. They're going to occupy close to, if you saw that, Alan, they're going to occupy close to 40 feet under the 40 feet of the north dock. So anyway,
It's a significant
it's a significant
area where we can't do anything.
No, it's a
Well,
significant.
there's two zones in that. One is a review zone and one is an exclusion zone.
Yes.
So the exclusion zone is 5 feet around the pipe. And then there's a review zone, which is larger.
It goes to 8 feet, but those pipes are separated by 39 feet. I mean, the pipes, the transmission lines
Right.
separated by 39 feet. So it's 39 feet plus 8 on one side, 8 on the other. And then, of course, you've got your north and south, but in any event.
How deep were they, John?
Well, beneath the pilings, they go 13 feet below the pilings. So, as I said, if in the future you need to go anything lower than that, you're probably not going to be able to arrange for that piling to go that deep. So.
Wow.
So, and then I'm worried about the aspect of coming up. They still have to elevate those pipes coming up into the parking lot area. So I don't know how that's going to affect also any future development, if there's any landscaping or anything else that's going to be required in that area. So it is what it is. It's a fait accompli. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or I'd like to discuss this at a later meeting. Now is not the time, because I think everyone should get a chance to look at what Eversource had submitted to us. We got that just the other day. I think it was 2 days ago. Amelia, I think.
Yeah, I think I forwarded that to everyone Monday.
Yeah, so, a chance, please look at that. As I said, it's going to be, well, I don't know what else to say about it. It is what it is.
I'm always pleased that Eversource actually sent those documents based on our motion at our last meeting. They came up with real drawings. I expected to be ignored, so this is a positive thing that we got something back, I think.
Yeah. Anyway.
Is there? We'll talk about zoning a little later. The waterfront zoning issues. Anything more on permit applications, anything like that?
No, none as far as the application so far. No, none that I've received.
Okay. Jeff.
The other project that we received a notice of is the environmental assessment for the DOT's work at the Merritt Parkway and Route 7 interchange. So that environmental assessment, environmental impact evaluation is out for public review and comment, and the comments are due August 31. And looking at the proposed work, there's substantial additional roadway surfaces that are envisioned in both of the alternatives that they're looking at. And of course, the issue has to do with stormwater runoff because the work is both over and on both sides of the Norwalk River. So all of the years that we spent trying to influence the DOT to include stormwater management measures in the I-95 bridge, an important part of that work was that would serve as a model that highway infrastructure projects can address stormwater management in the future. So I think that we can look over that document between now and the next commission meeting, but I believe it's the responsibility of the commission to review and comment on that because it can certainly impact the harbor with respect to the runoff of highway pollutants, depending on where they're going, where they would be directed.
Yeah, we'll send that. I'll send it around then prior to our next
Yeah,
meeting.
and I can speak to that a little bit. I've been on the steering committee for this since I don't know 2000 or 2005. So I've kind of been through the narrowing from 26 or more alternatives down to 2, and so this environmental impact statement really, at this point, is part of the decision-making process of which alternative to use to pursue. There are 2 designs for this interchange. They're very different. They both have merit. It's a question of what the state wants to spend and the kind of connectivity they want between the 2 highways. At this point, they haven't designed either roadway. It's really schematic design, just yellow lines on a paper. So until they have a choice made, they're not going to design any runoff management at all because they're not going to invest the time in designing 2 highway interchanges when they're only going to build perhaps 1. So I think it's fine to have a recommendation of what they should be aware of this, but there are no details to review at this point because they haven't detailed anything.
Well, I think we'd also argue, Alan, that the highway pollutants of concern are going to be the same no matter what alternative that they design. And there is a section on stormwater, I think, or drainage, and which, as you said, simply says that when they do the design, they'll address it. But I think that we made a comment that this is something that we're concerned about and that we will be looking at when the design is completed. But the environmental impact evaluation, I think, should identify the highway pollutants that have to be addressed no matter what design they choose.
I don't disagree, but I think that's a fairly concise statement that we need to make at this point.
Well, I think we need to take a front row seat, in this matter, Alan. I think, it's just since Norwalk Harbor is the unfortunate recipient of everything that comes down from Lewisburg all the way down to Norwalk, and I think we do have an invested interest, especially in when it requires dredging, and when every time it requires dredging, we're stuck with the pollutants that remain in the soil. The soil underneath the harbor. And so I think we need to take a closer look at the salt, the runoff. And if you remember that we had an incident not too long ago with I think it was an animal farm or chicken farm that was in Wilton, that they were discharging all of the waste product in Norwalk Harbor. And fortunately, our water quality interns managed to pick that up, and hopefully that was remedied. But we do get everything that comes down that pike. So
My point is, there's no detail to review at this time, other than to make that statement that we're watching and what the concern is. Okay, anything else?
We're done for application review.
Thanks, John.
Just for today.
I'll talk for just a couple of minutes. I'm very excited about having 8 of 9 seats filled. It makes it a lot easier for us, and a lot easier to have a quorum. Sometimes means some of us can miss a meeting when we have vacation and things like that. So that's all the positive. I really want to extend a great welcome to Chris, and we look forward to his becoming involved and working with us. this month has been kind of a thumbs up kind of a month for me, or at least or with no thumbs down. And I think what's been pleasing to me, and I think the commissioners can all be proud of the growing list of accomplishments we have and the initiative that commissioners have taken to make those achievements, to get things done. And the harbor master is part of that conversation as well, because he's been very active. But we have an active and apparently successful Norwalk guest mooring program as we speak. We have dock offer reservations. We have several moorings in the harbor. We have made arrangements with Parks and Rec in a very amicable manner. Other people speak about these things, but I'm just very pleased that it's all people have taken initiative and gotten those things accomplished. We got our exclusion zone information back from Eversource, which really shocked me that they actually complied with a motion that we made, or I think Chris made, to ask for that information. So I think that's wonderful. The harbor master and I have had a couple of I think very productive meetings with the local DOT Walk Bridge team to coordinate safety issues. The barge locations have been relocated in the inner harbor based on the locations of moorings that we provided. So they've jiggered those areas for the barge parking in the inner harbor around, so that we don't have to move or have to move only a couple of our recreational moorings. And that was done with good cooperation, good spirit on both sides. They've agreed that they'll reimburse us for any cost of moving those moorings. We tried to get that as part of the mooring installers work, but they had some contractual problems that prevented them from undertaking that. Thanks to Chris, we have the Amistad coming to town for the Oyster Festival, and to be putting on a program with for our youngsters in town, as well as for the attendees of the Oyster Festival. I think that's just terrific. So I think these achievements are great. I think people talk about them in their own reports. Other things that are going on, there's a Veterans Park shorefront restoration feasibility study that's supported by a grant. The committee is chaired by Sarah Crosby from the Maritime Aquarium. Louise Washer is very much involved, and Steve Bartish has been showing his support as well. They would like to have someone from the representative of the Harbor Management Commission serving with them. Louise will be with us at our next meeting to make a presentation with Sarah Crosby at our next commission meeting about what they're up to and what the plan is. But it would be nice if we had somebody that has a interest in redoing it's really the vegetation, I believe, at Veterans Park on the south tip. We had a request from Greens Ledge Lighthouse, which you may know has been completely gutted and renovated and turned into a sort of I'm sorry, Steve. Steve?
He's pointing at
You're
the
muted.
Picture of Green's Ledge.
Over my
Oh.
shoulder.
No.
Over your shoulder. The shiny picture over Mr. Bartish's right shoulder has all been done up, and it's really quite an achievement. There was they did make an application to DEEP for 2 harbor buoys, no anchoring buoys to go in. I don't think that we have anything really to say about that as the Harbor Commission. But what's interesting to me about these 2 no anchoring buoys is that they're at either side of their landing dock, which is secured by a C-Flex mooring system. And that's the same system we've been talking about as a possibility for our docks in the harbor. So it'll be interesting to watch how these C-Flex, this one dock stands up. It's out in really in harm's way out there outside the harbor almost. And they're putting in no anchoring buoys to keep people from getting their anchor lines tangled up in the C-Flexes. So it'll be very interesting for us to watch that. And I was going to just mention the 715 interchange, which we've already talked about. So unless there are questions about any of those things, I'm done with my report. Joe,
Alan, just a quick note. I attended the meeting with Dr. Crosby this afternoon at noontime. And one of the things they're looking at is they hired a consulting firm to not only look at what they're going to plant, but also putting in potential concrete structures to help minimize erosion and also provide habitat for shellfish. And I did make the recommendation that they contact the harbor master, because as any of us that use the harbor knows, when the fishing gets hot in this area, people at high tide will take their boats in above that mud flat. And somehow or other, if they put concrete structures in there, they may want to mark them somehow. Otherwise, some boats may have an accident. And it won't be soft bottom.
Jeff,
Joe, I might just like to interrupt just for a second. I don't know if they're thinking of the structures that are around Stratford Point or in the, yeah, that's going to raise some issues that will be brought up. Those are hard concrete structures, and although they're described as a part of a living shoreline, they clearly change the natural character of the shoreline. And the argument in Stratford by many people is that they don't fit in. But anyway, that's a discussion to have that we can have later. But I think that's a valid discussion as to whether those hard concrete structures are consistent with the natural character of the Norwalk Harbor shoreline and the Veterans Park shoreline. If what they're thinking about is based on the Stratford Point example. Thank you.
I think with the water continuing to seemingly increase in depth, it's a question of, is what gets done to keep Shorefront Park the park where it is, not Shorefront Park, Vets Park. Yes, Veterans Park from washing away. I mean, it's underwater occasionally now, and if that trend continues, it's a very different. In 2 years or 3 years, it may be a very different kind of place. So there's a lot to think about there. Seems to me.
Joe, are those standard structures? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with these structures. These standard structures to prevent erosion?
They're made commercially.
John, the ones at Stratford Point are like a giant concrete wiffle ball, and they're intended to let to capture seed oysters and facilitate the growth of shellfish. The Bureau of Aquaculture is not convinced that they work. Part of the justification for the Stratford Point project, and I'll stop in a minute, but we spent years on this, is that's the site of the old Remington Gun Club. And there's lead in the sediment and in the land itself that even though there was a remediation project, it continues to seep out. And so that the property owner at the time was agreeable to these structures in an effort to try to stop the lead. There's also associated with those structures of planting of wetland vegetation, and also I've got numerous photos, John, of it, as well as bringing in oyster or shells of different species to buffer the shoreline.
I won't belabor the point now, but what are those stone baskets or the brigels, or what are they called?
No, well, these structures are called reef balls. Actually, it's very interesting. But anyway, I'm taking the time out of your discussion, but it's not a straightforward proposal that everybody is going to agree to.
And I think that's why it's important for us to have a representative on that committee. And Steve, you've signed on, is that correct?
I'm here.
Bartush? You're involved with that committee as well, right?
Yeah, but it's at noon during a work day, which makes it very tough for me.
Yeah.
And I'm on the committee. And like I suggested to Sarah, they contacted Bruce. They should contact Bruce to get his input so that they understand the ramifications of doing something like this in an active harbor. The ones that are in Stratford are not in the exact location of of a harbor and within a.
Right there off the side. Yeah.
Terrific. And our next meeting, the representatives from the Maritime, Sarah Crosby and Louise Washer, I believe, would like to present to us, so that will be helpful, I think. And
Yep.
find out what's going on. Staff reports, Harbor Master Lavallo.
Evening, everybody. Couple things. I got had a report from the Marine unit that there is a sailboat that was anchored off Sheffield Island for a few weeks, unattended. One of these thunderstorms, they got a report of it that it might break loose from its anchor. So I made the decision. It was towed in and put on one of our moorings. And Deputy Harbor Master Owen Lee is in the process of trying to track down the last registered owner. It's got a New York registration. So that's in the process. Norwalk PD also reported to me of an illegal mooring with a clothesline that was attached to the seawall to the rear of number 34 Shorefront Park. I guess some kids were swimming and got kind of tied up in this clothesline. So I made the command decision to have it pulled immediately, and I notified Amelia and Commissioner Mangles, and Amelia wrote up a letter to that resident about the mooring. So that was actually pulled today. Transit moorings. DOCWA is working. We're getting business. So the two moorings, two more moorings that were placed off of Sheffield. Everything's been labeled with the DOCWA contact information. One of the moorings in the harbor, I had to shift around a little bit to find a little deeper water because we lost a 3-day visit because it was a sailboat with almost a 6-foot keel, and obviously that wouldn't work. I guess the person was afraid that they would touch bottom. So that one of the transient moorings was moved today, actually, and a little bit in 9 feet of water at low tide. So hopefully that's going to work. That's all I got. I'm sorry, I got to cut short. My wife went running this evening, and I had to go pick her up because she twisted her knee. So I'm off to the walk-in.
All right.
Oh boy.
The family of good knees.
Yeah. That's all we need. But I'm happy to see that the people are coming to Norwalk on the transients. I think Jeff and I had a reservation for today.
Mhm.
So baby steps.
Baby steps, and just thank you for all the effort both of you guys have put in on this, because it really is. It's something we've talked about for several years. It's nice to have it actually working and being successful. And we've had some a nice review or two from the people who've been here. So
5-star so far. We're a 5-star rating. Yeah. So that's my report for this evening.
Thank you, Bruce. Mr. Stedman.
Thank you. I'll try to go through this quickly. As maybe you know, we were not successful this past legislative session in achieving an amendment to the Connecticut Harbor Management Act, which would have upheld and clarified the authority of this commission and every other harbor management commission in Connecticut. So as the way things stand now, the Superior Court and the Appellate Court ruled that there is no legal authority for a harbor management commission to review and comment on applications for state permits. And that, of course, was was the finding of the hearing officer in the Walk Bridge project. So if there is the Walk Bridge public hearing, and if there is a public hearing on the Eversource project, we might get the same response. So subsequent to the end of the legislative session, there have been some discussions with representatives from DEEP who indicated a willingness to discuss this some more. And there was no legislative changes because DEEP objected to what was proposed by the Harbor Management Commissions. So John, as the president of the Harbor Management Association, has reached out to DEEP to try to discuss this matter some more, but has not received a response. So we're hoping that some of the legislators that have taken an interest and have supported this will try to move that forward. So not much to do right now, but it's significant because there are 6 towns now that are updating their harbor management plans, and the 7th, New London, that's preparing a plan. And this issue affects the implementation of the plans. So that's my less than positive report on that, but we're going to keep working on it because it does affect significantly everything that we do. And then maybe Chris can report later on, but the paperwork for the accepting the Port Authority grant to study the street end opportunities for public access, that's been completed and signed. However, there's an issue with that, with not so much that grant, but again, an issue of harbor management significance is that the program manager for the Connecticut Port Authority, who's been the person that's been most helpful to us, and in fact, the only person that with a maritime experience at the Port Authority, he's being reassigned to the Connecticut DOT outside of Maritime Authority. So our concern is that why would the state want to do that and not best utilize the experience and knowledge of the people most involved? And is this going to set back everything that we've worked on for the last number of years? So the Harbor Management Association, the Connecticut Maritime Coalition, and also the Marine Trades have had written letters to the Commissioner of Transportation and the Office of the Secretary of the Policy and Management, urging them to do something about this so that the continuity of the SHIP program, which we hope will be a source of funds for the Veterans Park Marina, so that those programs won't be diminished or the continuity affected. Amelia, would you let me share my screen just briefly? I hadn't planned on doing this, but just related to the topic that we just discussed.
Yep, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. And I don't know that you can see this. It says it's loading. Okay.
Oh, lovely.
These are what are called reef farms offshore of Stratford Point in the Housatonic River. And they're described by DEEP and others as part of a living shoreline approach. And as I mentioned, not everybody agrees that these are suitable. They're hard structures, that they're suitable for trying to deal with resiliency and deal with shoreline erosion because of their inconsistency with the natural and traditional character of the shoreline. And when the tide's low, they're even more impressive. If that's
Look like machine gun nests.
right word.
Yeah, it's really reminiscent of a wartime environment. It looks like Normandy Beach. You know, it's horrible.
There are other structures too that
My thoughts exactly, Alan. My thought.
But if this is what's being proposed or suggested well, anyway, I didn't mean to get off the track. It's just interesting that it was raised tonight. But I just wanted to point out that not everybody is in agreement that these are appropriate structures.
Jeff, what's your thoughts off the record? Have they? What's the amount of years they've been in? Have they been really effective?
The Stratford Harbor Commission has been following this, and there was a tragic occurrence because the professor at Sacred Heart who was developing this project unexpectedly passed away. So it needs additional permits to expand, but as I said, the Bureau of Aquaculture is not convinced that they have served the purpose of creating growth of shellfish inside of them. Whether they've stopped erosion of the shore, but our thought is too, if it wasn't for the special circumstances here with the leaking lead, that the property owner probably wouldn't have agreed to this. Connecticut Audubon now owns Stratford Point, so it'll be interesting to see. And there are some other structures that are being proposed along the shoreline here too, including what you might think of as like a barbell with weights on it, but that's put into the substrate vertically. There's all sorts of stuff, and we've made the argument that these shouldn't be considered as a part of a living shoreline. That it's a hard structure with environmental enhancements around it, but the benefit of it is still subject to discussion. And perhaps the best thing about this is that they're also used as an outdoor classroom for students to look at. So to the extent that you could discuss whether these things are worthwhile or whether they do fit in with the natural shoreline. I mean, some people have argued that it would be better to have the shoreline erode, which is a natural condition, than to have these sorts of structures. But anyway, I'm going on. It's been a long time to review these things.
Well, and I also, sorry. I also feel like we don't know whether or not this is what the group is considering for Vets Park. So I think we can wait till next meeting when Louise Washer and Sarah, and our last name, are here, and see what they're proposing, and certainly share our opinions on this particular structure.
I think, yeah, and I believe they had their first meeting today at noon, is my understanding. So they're new at this too. They're just getting started with their consultant. So.
And then
anything else, Jeff?
Last part of my report, and I left a message for you, Alan. I talked with the director of the Bureau of Aquaculture today, who is supportive of a condition in the harbor master's permit for the moorings at Green's Ledge. That would make clear that if the permittee, if the use of those moorings damages the surrounding shellfish beds through prop wash or some other construction related action, that the permittee will be responsible for correcting the damage. So he said he would work with us and the Shellfish Commission on developing an appropriate condition to attach in the harbor master's permit.
That's an urgent item to get on, because those moorings will go in very, very soon. They're not going to wait for the mooring tackle itself. Permit or not, they'll be going in, I think. Anything else, Jeff?
No, thank you. No, thank you. No.
Chairman Bartish.
Thank you, Chairman Kibbe. So the Shellfish Commission resolved essentially a Shellfish Commissionized pair of motions that were in line with this commission's motions as far as the Eversource project was concerned. We additionally asked what the $10,000 that the Shellfish Commission has been granted, if you will, is for, and how that could be spent. We have concerns about that. And lastly, as it relates to the barge moorings, we resolved to ask Harbor Master Lavallo that as a condition of his permit, that he ask for a bond to be carried in the amount of $8 million. Also, we'd like to thank Harbor Master Lavallo for catching some recreational shellfish poachers, if you will, on the Vets Park property. Harbor Master Lavallo was able to handle that with some education, and the shellfish were returned unharmed to the water. So recreational shellfishing just reopened today. One can listen for closures at 203 807, or excuse me, 838-9807, and eat Norwalk shellfish. And I yield back. Permits at Fisherman's World.
I have a question about the barge permitting. We presented, Harbor Master and I presented that your motion from the last meeting to the DOT guys, the local guys, and they were said this had already been discussed. They didn't have any details, but in issuing, this had all been considered in the issuing by DEEP of the permits. Has anyone seen the permits that DEEP has issued and what conditions have been attached to them? Jeff?
We looked at the permits when they were issued by DEEP for the commercial moorings, and as I recall, there are no conditions associated with them, even though we had asked throughout the permitting process, the regulatory process, that these matters that we're now discussing be addressed by DEEP. So we can go back and look at it again, but
is it possible to get copies of those permits? I mean, it would just be that's kind of the first question I would ask is what did they say or do, and review that.
Well, we have them. I can certainly share them. And DOT's response was that they didn't need, like, apparently in recent meeting with Bruce, that they didn't need additional permits because they had the DEP permit. They then contacted the DEP person who said that's not the case, that the DEP permit was issued with respect to a particular section of the general statutes. The harbor master's authority to issue mooring permits is a different section of the statute. And it is another section of the statute that says no mooring can be placed in the harbor without a permit from the harbor master. So DEEP, well, anyway, DEEP is, I'll send the permit that was issued by DEEP to you. I thought.
It'd just be interesting to see what they've done.
Yeah.
But you're correct, Alan. The first part of what they told you is true. It was discussed, but that's all that happened.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the guys on site are privy to all those details either. I mean, they were told by their management that what's been done and what hasn't been done. Any other questions for Chairman Bartosh? Moving right along, mooring and harbor safety, Mr. Mangles.
Thank you, Alan. As Harbor Master Lavallo stated that the DACWA is up. It's live. We've had a few visitors, a couple of, good responses from that. They contacted me, so either I'm on the phone with them, not DACWA, but the reservation people making the reservations. We did lose a 3-day spot due to the draft of a large sailboat, 38-foot sailboat. That, as Harbor Master Lavallo stated, that we went to deeper waters with one of those moorings, so we will reserve that for the larger sailboats that are going to draw a little bit more water. That was brought to our attention by a mooring holder that was in that vicinity, that the depth of the water isn't quite what it used to be. So that has been resolved. I met with Recreation and Parks, as you mentioned. Working together with Recreation and Parks and just open communication with anybody is wonderful. Ken Hughes and Pam Rayla came down, met with me earlier this week, and talking about the stencils for the dinghy tie-up for the transient mooring. At that time, they said, no problem, we'll just gotta get that done. And at that time, I figured, since I had them, I'd ask for an office space over at the Dockmaster shed house building for the harbor master, and they said that they could accommodate that. And again, that's 4 to 8 weeks. I said it doesn't have to happen overnight, so in a couple of months. And that's especially because the walk bridge project, when that gets underway, it would be useful to have the harbor master available and have a place to do paperwork or do whatever he needs to do. So that will be coming. And again, they couldn't have been more accommodating and easier to work with than, I mean, I've had tougher times doing other things. The abandoned vessel that Bruce stated, it's So the last owner of record said that he sold it to some other person, gave the name. Deputy Harbor Master Lee contacted that person. He said that he sold it to somebody else. So we are trying to make contact with that person. It is secure. It's not a hazard. So we're okay with that. Managed fields, second payment. So I'm chasing second payment on the managed fields. Rowayton Yacht Club has a check waiting for us. Even though I've asked all managed fields to mail in the checks. So we are going to address that as well. And besides everything else that the Harbor Master stated, I was on the phone with him when he chased off the shellfish people. Steve, I'm not sure, but it may be helpful if there were signs, and maybe there are signs over at Betts Park. That's where this occurred. Whether or not some signs that say no shellfishing would be appropriate there.
No,
They did.
I fully
I'm sorry.
agree. Yeah, I fully agree. So we're looking into having them posted at both entrances to the park.
Okay, perfect. And Fisherman's World did benefit from that, or Shellfish Commission did benefit from that interaction, because that's where that gentleman went to go ahead and go get a permit. And then the chart that they hand out where clamming is approved. So it's very good.
Thank you.
Other than that, that's it. That's my report.
Any questions for Jeff? Moving right along. Mr. McDonald, Finance King.
Finance hat, okay, so we have, I'll just go over the revenues and expenditures. We did get a $1,690 stripe payment. That's the moorings, correct?
Online mooring.
Online moorings,
Mhm.
yep. And since everybody's talking about DocWa, we should note that $347 came in on July 3rd from DocWa. So if we've had a good month of July, that we should probably expect at least that again, I would think. And then there was a payroll accrual reversal. I'm not sure what that means, but and then the expenditures were Bruce's stipend and 2 people for payroll. I assume these are water quality interns that are on for the summer, and so we had the ending balance is $24,000. I believe we received an invoice from Jeff, 5 months of his activity for $6,420. I distributed that. Do we have any comment or question about that? Otherwise, I'll make a motion that we approve Jeff's invoice for payment.
I'd like to second that.
All in favor?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have a line budget of that for planning consultants, and I assume that's what Jeff falls under for 25,000. The burn rate that he's been doing this year, and I know he's been quite busy. We won't come anywhere near close to 25,000. I don't know if that number was a carryover, because I think I think one year we had multiple billings of his carried over from previous years. Is that
And
why
we
we
had,
had such a big number?
And there was also Dr. Hart, is that right? What was it other consultant we had? Thomas Hart, was it?
Well,
That was
Yes,
the,
we had the water quality consultant work too.
Yes.
From last year.
yes.
All right, that's just for clarification. Yeah, and Bruce left. He asked a question about how he got reimbursed, and I just asked him to submit receipts to to myself and Mary Ann, but I didn't hear any follow-up from that. So, yeah, nothing more to report from Treasury.
I think we expect more gas charges going forward with the Walk Bridge project. That's part of the reason we really should be getting compensation for our, in the form of our mooring fees in the harbor, is all the additional expenses that goes with those barge moorings and being out and seeing what's going on. So.
Right. We should remind Chimbrow Middlesex that it's a $200 per mooring fee.
Chris, we also have added expense. We have our harbor master's expense as far as, the boat is concerned. We also have the responsibility for the deputy harbor masters, don't we?
Yes. Oh, there's no compensation there. They use the boat, but there's no.
Oh, they're not using any of their own vessels or anything. They're using.
No, they're using ours.
Okay, all right. I got you.
And some, Chris, if I.
Anything
can
for Chris?
interrupt,
Anything more?
Not for Treasury, no.
No. Jeff?
we may be able to use, depending on how the project goes, to look at the street ends. I mean, we need an engineering consultant to do the engineering or make engineering related recommendations, but some of that work we may also be able to do ourselves to supplement what was provided in the SHIP grant. But we're going to have to take a look at that now, and now we can move that forward because the paperwork has been signed and delivered back to the city and to the Port Authority.
Right. Should we slide into plans and recommendations, Alan?
Yes, let's sashay in there.
Okay, Jeff kicked the door open. So yeah, so the grant we received was for 44,000. And the plan was, yes, to have to hire a consultant through an RFP with the DPW to solicit a consultant to prepare recommendations for improvements of street ends. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the scope before. I won't go into that at the moment. So I got a sample RFP from DPW last year, and I sort of put it aside because it's been dormant for so long. But I'll dust that off and send a draft to, I forget, they got Daniel, I think is his name, Daniel Stanton. I forget. They got the DPW that was going to handle that. So that'll be taken care of through DPW. And yes, there will be work, I think in terms of the right-of-way side and the city record side, I don't think we will have a consultant, outside consultant do that. I think, ourselves, and I'll solicit as much help from Vanessa at DPW as I can. I have a call into her, but she didn't get back to me before the meeting because I wanted to just, I was calling her before I got the good news that the grant, the money's actually come through. So that's all terrific. And there's no update from DPW for months now on what's happening with the Vets Park dock. And now that I'm a user over there, there's a little bit of a buzz about and there are mooring holders, wanting to make sure that the new dock will have space for the mooring holders to pull up for a touch and go, whether they need to pick up passengers or just move, supplies or trash or anything on or off their vessel. So they're not doing everything via dinghy. I mean, we all access the boat via dinghy, but it's really helpful to bring it in. There's a hose there to clean up the boat if you need to. And I think that's, and the only people that will be able to use that are people who are already paying $350 a year for their dinghy slip. Otherwise, you don't have a key to get in there, as well as paying us for having a mooring there. So I don't think it would be, there's no way freeloaders would be able to do that. So that's a recommendation. I'll make on behalf of the Harbor Commission, not just as a mooring holder myself, but these are our customers and they're also Parks Department customers that use the dock, and having a touch and go spot for bigger boats is, I think, an important part of that. So I need to make that recommendation. But that I haven't seen anything from DPW in almost a year from race. It's been, I don't know what's been going on in the background. So that's, that's an open question, open issue right now. There's nothing really to report about the Amistad. It's, all systems are go. I talked to Gary Wetmore. He's full in on being able to supply us with a barge. So there's some background discussion between the Amistad people and the people at the Donovan Center, I guess, and as well as Bruce Lavallo, just to figure out some of the logistics of how to of what they need in terms of ramps and railings and any steps and anything else. But yeah, I mean that's a full on go for September. And also I attended on the 19th last week the Sono resiliency meeting. So they're making their final report for so this had to do with flood and heat island, resiliency of the infrastructure for that. I've mostly paid attention to the issues of flooding and how they want to address that. They are going to make some recommendations about stormwater outflow. I really emphasized to them that they need to put backflow preventers in to prevent the nuisance flooding that happens when the high tides backflow through the catch basins and flood Water Street. Their main emphasis is not to make, you wouldn't be able to make Water Street passable, but you need to be able, I think the goal is to be able to make an egress path, a high and dry egress path from points. So what they've done with the new development on Water Street, where they raised Raymond Street, so that you can egress from the new buildings there up to South Main Street. They want to make a similar type of approach on, you get the streets right here. It's Concord and Water, which is the next one south after Raymond before you get to Burritt. That whole street is quite low and you wouldn't be able to egress via that. There's also quite an ambitious proposal for Woodward Avenue, sort of south of Sheridan or Loud Street. It's not clear on the diagram where Loud Street's full. So Loud Street is the last one that connects from Woodward back up to Quintard and over the hill that way. South of that point, Woodward is basically a peninsula. All the side streets for Harbor Shores, Shorefront Park, not Shorefront Park, Harbor View, Harbor Shores, and Village Creek all have to pass through a section of Woodward Avenue, which is prone to flooding. So they have quite an ambitious plan to raise Woodward Avenue, but also shift its alignment slightly into the setback that's in front of all those, the warehouse, WB Mason, all those warehouse type buildings that are along that part of Woodward Avenue, where there's a setback from their original covenants when that land was sold off from the original Village Creek development. It would, it's quite ambitious, and and my suggestion was they need to extend. You want to have an egress corridor, you need to extend, the viaduct through the marsh all the way to Shorefront Park, or else, there's another 70 or 80 or 100 households that don't have that, for example, you couldn't get emergency vehicles in and out during a really high water event. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing they're looking at. I mean, it's a study, they talked about that there's a project pipeline, with the state, there's a resiliency project pipeline for funding, and they're just trying to get stuff in the queue. This is, it's just for Sono. Michelle DeLuca, who's the director of emergency management, really wanted a larger approach for the whole city, but this project is very specific to Sono, where there's denser, it's a denser urban place environment, so that the heat island effect is more intense there, as well as the flooding, as well as being low income and more densely populated. So yeah, that's a lot, and that report is out. I think I don't know if that's publicly available. I'm sure I could circulate it within our committee if anybody was interested. There was a public meeting about 2 weeks ago, so there is some material, I'm sure, that's available to the general public, but I also have some specific stuff that I could share within the commission, I'm sure. And yeah, with the street end thing kicking off, I'll be looking for some help with stuff, with some ideas. And probably also have to do a little legwork ourselves with the city records, especially for some of the properties that are maybe a little more contentious in terms of right away. But I'm really looking forward to that kicking off. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Thanks, Chris. Mike seems to have vanished. He was, I guess, out of town. So I don't have no report from Michael. Joe Schnierling, the Mayor's Water Quality Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start on the committee, just a heads up for the group. And I already sent an email to Alan and to Steve. The water temperature at the aquarium today was 26.2 degrees Celsius, which is about 79.1 degrees. Now, what that means is dissolved oxygen levels are way down. It was down to 0.1 milligram per liter or part per million. And as such, it's not going to support much life, especially if we get a big school of fish. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden we start getting phone calls saying there's a lot of dead fish in the harbor. Why is it? Who dumped pollution there? And that's a usual scenario that usually happens. And if Save the Sound calls up, tell them it's natural conditions. This is what our harbor does every year. And especially when you have a heat wave like we're in right now. Now, as far as the Water Quality Committee, the meeting today with Dr. Crosby was just exploratory. And they introduced the consultant, and the consultant hopefully is going to meet with different groups to get their input on it. Right now, they are primarily looking at reintroducing natural vegetation into that area. And indigenous vegetation. So we're looking at probably putting in Spartina patens and Spartina alterniflora. Whether it takes or not, that's something else, because storms have already eroded a lot of what was there. And that's why they're trying to introduce it. And as far as the concrete structures that we were talking about earlier, that is a possibility to help minimize the erosion, but that's it. And it's only a possibility at this point. There's been no real discussion on it. The Department of Health, I talked to Mr. Mooney about the samples that I had told you guys about with the red algae, the Protostromium minimum. And he said they did not post anything, even though I had talked to 2 people who own dogs that had been swimming, and the dogs became ill in Taylor Farm Dog Park and in that little pond there. And I advise them they may want to keep their dogs out because of the red algae that's there. It does produce a mild toxin if it's consumed. And for whatever reason, they chose not to post it as, keep your dogs out right now. It's not healthy. And as far as the Harbor Commission discussion that we had, one of the things, this was with Jeff, one of the things I recommended, and we can still do it with Eversource, is when Eversource does put their lines in, possibly we could talk them into putting a concrete marker in the asphalt or a steel marker in the asphalt to indicate somehow a start point and an end point for the transmission lines. So at least we would have a line of sight of where the drilling has taken place. And from my work at the aquarium, no one had an idea of where the lines went under the docks that the aquarium had, but they do know that lines are there. So even though they had to do a lot of exploring, a lot of digging and so forth, they never found the lines. But there's a big sign on top saying transmission lines are under the water. Dick Harris noted that 12 rivers in the middle of the state have been declared a fishing advisory alert not to eat freshwater fish, particularly the work was done on bass. And they seem to accumulate PFAS, the PFAS. There was no testing done on the Norwalk River for this. But on the side of that, the Norwalk River is not famous for their bass population. So I don't know how much fishing would take place for bass, but Dick suggested to do an exploratory run on that, and hopefully they're going to take us up on that. The potential zoning changes, we talked about that, and we strongly encourage the members to participate in the different committees and the different presentations. And that's about it. Any questions?
So thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you.
That brings us to new business. Dr. Pinner and I talked earlier about the need to respond to the zoning issue, particularly with the marine commercial designations on Water Street and all the way up to Wall Street. I believe that's the 31st of August that input is due, as I understand it. I think we should have get a group, a committee together amongst us to really become experts on that and to craft some language about what our feeling about that zone is. I think that I would benefit from going down and walking around down there, or parking my car and walking around, just to see what's there now, because it's there's an awful lot of non-marine dependent stuff in there. There's the architect's office, there's all kinds of things. So it'd be interesting to know what we have going on and to have a sort of baseline for us. So I'm just wondering if we can,
with the art committee, Arlen, we have, there's Chris, you're myself.
Yeah. I thought you said the art committee, and I thought, well, wow, that's pretty artsy. Yeah, there's three of us, Chris, myself, anybody else, and Matt, you're an arc person. Chris White.
Yeah, I'll jump up.
You actually work in the zone, right?
I'm looking at it right now, I believe. You guys are talking about Water Street, right?
Yeah.
Now that's part of it, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for Chris's bit, the east side of Water Street, basically from Straffolino Bridge all the way down to Burritt Street, I think, which encompasses where your office is a marine commercial district. And what marine commercial means, and are they going to carve part of that off and call it something different, and is all under discussion with the rezoning of the city, which I'm sure you've seen lawn placards for up and down.
They substantially cut that area.
Yeah, they're basically talking about rezoning the frontage part on Water Street, which is less significant the further south you go, but takes up a good bit of it once you get up north. So I'd like to do that. I'd like to see what the latest and greatest from, it was just a TBD on the last official thing put out by the city. I know we've seen things that had there was two, and I guess when last time I was looking at it, there was like 3 different options about what they would do there.
Well, I'd like to recommend that, Jeff be with it, because there's a number of procedural items that we need to take in consideration now, as far as the timing of responses that we have and the POCD and then the waterfront industrial zone, about how many days we have to respond and what the procedures are.
There are 3 interrelated. There are 3 interrelated proposals that we have to sort out in terms of the time frame for response, and one is the amendment to the POCD to support the waterfront industrial study plan. And our understanding is that has to be done before they can change any of the zoning. So there's three things. There's the POCD, there's the waterfront industrial zone study, and then there's the large zoning proposal. So the recent referral that we received from Mr. Kleppen was with respect to the amendment to the POCD. But there was no time that I saw a timeline given as to the anticipated date of action and so how much time we have to respond to it. That referral was also made to the Commissioner of Energy and Environmental Protection. And again, it's that, so we have to sort through the timelines that are involved and the different approvals that are involved. Because the approvals have to do not only, as I understand it, and as Deep told me they understand it, not only with respect to the statutes that deal with amendments to the POCD, but to the statutes that deal with the amendments to Norwalk's Municipal Coastal Program, and those statutes are part of the Connecticut Coastal Management Act. So all those things have to be sorted out.
We don't know if Mr. Kleppen is aware of that, but I think.
He must be aware. We just have to clarify it.
Well, that's what I think we had to sit.
Can't imagine that. What's the time period and how much time do we have and what's the relationship between those three elements? So that's my.
I think so. Typically with POCD amendment referrals, I don't remember off the top of my head, it would either be 35 or 65 days to comment. I can get that information in the office tomorrow, but I imagine that Steve Kleppen would likely be open to coming to the August meeting to discussing that and how those are related. He is out of the office this week, but just putting that out there.
But I think the commission needs to meet on its own, Amelia, just to discuss the issues as far as I'm concerned, that waterfront transfer, this changing all around the entire waterfront industrial zone to put more residential area in there is and then to have the consideration of rainfall, flooding in that area, and then putting people at risk in that area is just, and have a resiliency plan to try to compensate for it is the best backwards, I think.
What are we reviewing at this time? Or is that what Jeff has to figure out?
Well, I think what we're reviewing are the elements of the zoning regulations, the zoning regulation proposal and the POCD as they affect the property adjoining the harbor.
Well, am I wrong in thinking that the last time that area is a TBD in the zoning proposal?
It was, but I think the last time I saw it, they had taken from Washington Street basically down to the South Norwalk Boat Club, that section of Water Street. They had taken sort of separated that in a half, two halves. A southern half that was marine dependent and a northern half that was sort of marine dependent, but allowing public access and
residential
vistas
of
the water and things like that at the north end. So it was
all right. I haven't seen north south. Well, I've seen one with an east west divide, with a 125-foot setback off of Water Street, which is not a north south thing. It's an east west divide. But so it'd be good to know what we're commenting on. I don't want to comment on something that's not what,
it's all public. It's all there, but they've come up, they've
all right.
Taken that section of Water Street, and there's a north and a south now. I can't remember what the designations are, but it's a 5 CW and 5 something else. One allows more housing. Not necessarily dense housing. Steve Kleppen kind of prefaces it all by saying, well, it's what the demand is. You have to come, if there's demand for marine dependent, and you have marine dependent if nobody wants to have that, which my observation is that we have 3 empty lots, I believe, at the top of Water Street. They've been vacant for 40 years. There's been nothing there. Nobody's been clamoring for any kind of marine dependent use
Well,
there. So there's
Well, we know
a
one
lot
of
of
them will be taken over, Alan,
questions.
for the horizontal directional drilling. And the cable splicing. That one
No,
splice.
yes, I'm talking about those lots that are, have been empty for 40 years, you know,
68 water and then 98.
90,
Yeah.
90, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of questions, and I think we need to look at the map, and I think we need to go down there and drive around a little bit and snoop around and just see exactly what's being proposed, because I don't think any of us really knows.
I would just add, and I'm sorry to keep.
How do
harping
we
on
find out what's being proposed?
We
Right,
have the zone, we have the zoning map and we have the industrial water, the proposed zoning map. And we have the industrial waterfront zoning plan, if that's what it's, I forget. the
That
exact-
had multiple options. That's.
Yes, but
All right,
that.
well,
that-
then. Yeah, all right.
It's not options, it's two different zones now, is how they're proposing it. It's the north and the south.
I would just argue that there's another aspect of this in addition to just an amendment to the POCD and the zoning regulations. It's an amendment to Norwalk's municipal coastal program that was established pursuant to the Coastal Management Act. So we may very well feel that it's appropriate to change that, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't recognize that that's what's being proposed and what Deep has to comment on. So Deep's comments will be whether or not what's being proposed is consistent with the Coastal Management Act. And they're not regulatory comments, but I think that can't be overlooked because, as we said, all of the work that was done in the past to establish that municipal coastal program. And I think that's the other part of it. But we can sort all this out.
Go.
Alan, two quick thoughts.
Sure.
No one has mentioned how much or how many vessels we are actually catering to that are on that side of the harbor. And I think you might be surprised at the number of people that are dependent on that industry in that side of the harbor. The other thing that needs to be addressed, now I'm fairly new to Norwalk. I've only been here 50 years, but those upper lots were at one time, and John, correctly, because you've been here a little longer, they had a petroleum company there.
Harrison Gans.
And Pepco, there were two.
Pepco. It was actually Pepco. Yeah.
And if I'm correct, there's an issue with the ground there. And that's why it hasn't been developed.
Well, I think part of that, Joe, has also been remediated.
Some of it has,
Yeah.
but I don't think it all has been.
They did some heat treatment to that soil that was there, if I recall, some years back. Yeah.
So, well, I think what we need to do is have to work on this outside of these commission meetings, because it's we obviously don't all know what's required and what's
Well, we can get a meeting, a call together. So I'll send
have
out.
to be fewer than 5 of us. We can't have a quorum. That's the only.
Right.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll be an alternate maybe, because John, Chris, and Matt would make 4. We don't want to have 5 because we're doing business of the commission if we have 5 on a committee.
As a consultant, there's no problem. Yeah.
We can all write commentary, but it's a matter of meeting.
Right. Or I'll send out a working agenda, get some timelines to meet.
Jeff, if you could clarify what the procedural flow of all this is, it would be really.
I could do that.
When I get the agenda, we'll get that all clarified. Yeah.
And-
Not have a meeting in City Hall, John?
Yes, I'd like to meet in person, Alan, if we could.
Sure.
We can sit down and look at plans on the table, spread them out.
Yeah, and if somebody has those plans or a link to the actual proposal that we'll be reviewing, not.
You should have those in planning and zoning, don't you?
Yep, we have everything in the office and everything's posted to the website. So if you come into our conference room, we have like the big smart board, so you can pull it up there, or we should have the paper copies too.
That's certainly that'll work. All right.
Yeah, and if you want to get down to someplace where you can look at it while you're doing it too, you can just come by my office. We have a huge conference room right here and it's empty all the time.
Yeah, that might be a better place to do it.
Also, the interactive map they have, I don't know if this one is the most updated, does still have it all as TBD for that zone, that portion of zoning.
I think I have a link to that. I'll look for that right after this and distribute it if I do.
No,
I don't think the interactive map is updated, Chris, but the PDF that's on the website, on the zoning, planning and zoning webpage, there is like a webpage just for the zoning update, and the PDF one there is updated with what Alan was saying, which is, I think, CD5W and like that north half, and then, yeah, SDMC
There
in
you
the southern
There
half.
it is.
This is, I have not seen this one before, so it'd be good. Yeah, so what is CD5W now? So Special District Marine Commercial, presumably that's the old designation. What's a 5W? What are we doing? What's,
Is that
So
correct?
the W stand, it's for like water dependent, that's what the W is for, and CD5 is like a more concentrated urban core kind of use, like CD3 is more suburbs, CD4 is getting closer and closer to an urban feel. And then everything is on the website too, so the regulations can give you a much better description of what
Yeah.
that zone is and what is allowed better than I can off the top of my head.
I believe it allows 4-story apartment buildings. And if we're thinking it's going to be anything other than that, and a walkway being considered a water dependent use, we're crazy.
yeah. So
As,
that's,
as described, it was urban density mixed use, Chris.
Yeah.
right.
And why, and I don't even understand the rationale of why they truncated.
That's for us to discuss and
I know,
Yeah, that's where we have a committee formed.
you know,
So
there's no,
John, you'll take the lead on that?
yeah, I'll get, I'll get the agenda going and we'll get what we have to do first, second, and third, and we can have a date to meet. If we can meet Amelia in planning and zoning conference room. And
Yep,
I'll-
that or Chris White also suggested his conference room. Either is fine. If you do want to come into City Hall, just let me know and I can make sure that space is reserved for you all.
All right,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
yeah. Wow.
That's all I have on our agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All right,
Second?
second that.
Thanks, John.
Congratulations
favor?
on your first under 2-hour meeting, Alan.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, what do
Alan.
we,
There's an
yeah,
all
we're just spreading them out. Now we have-
honor,
we're gonna
Chris
have-
White. Thanks, Chris, but we just.
Now we're gonna have more meetings, so it's all right, it's all. I'm very excited about getting something really concrete going about this waterfront zoning business down there in Sono. I think it's very important for us to.
This is
uh,
long
make a
overdue.
statement.
Yes, a long overdue, yes.
So. All right, we're adjourned.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.